Okay, so there was a festival on, I think it was called the Disruption Festival. It was around November last year, and I can't remember exactly how I came across it. It was probably through a synchronicity, but I felt compelled to attend. It's free. Certain events were free, and it was at this location here down by the Yarra River in Melbourne. And there was a huge tent set up here, and I saw a particular session with a number of speakers, and one of the speakers was from Detroit actually, and she was amazing, and she was speaking about how the city has been rejuvenated through local food initiatives and soul food and so forth since the downfall of or the demise of the car manufacturing industry in the city. And I can't remember if it was during her talk or someone else's, but as I was sitting there, two young women sat immediately in front of me, and one of them had a cap that she'd had turned backwards, and it had a sketch, an illustration of two breasts, a woman's breasts, and just that. And I found it intriguing because it resonated with what I was thinking about in terms of the brand. And the woman at that restaurant who I was compelled to go back and see, she introduced me to the book by Dr. Naomi Wolf called Vagina. So I spoke of Dr. Naomi Wolf, I think, in one of the very early chapters of this vlog regarding the beauty myth book that I'd read of hers as a late teenager. And but just based on some initial sketches that I presented to this woman, I just felt compelled to engage with her, and spoke with her about this secret project that I was doing, and she expressed interest, so I brought these rough ideas to her. And during that conversation, she just immediately said, "Have you read the book Vagina?" And that book actually was really significant because initial ideas that I'd had were tweaked and kind of transformed to become much stronger and original as well, or more original. And because the process that I went through meant that I didn't do research on my ideas and so forth. They were just through that downloading process of that trance-like state, going down to deep rock. It just felt important to do these designs regardless of what else was going on and regardless of how commercially viable they were. But it feels very much in hindsight that the universe needed me to go back to see her for a number of reasons, and one of them being the discovery of that book. And I'll talk about, I might have time in another chapter to talk about a couple of amazing kind of universal interventions, if you like, that led to tweaking of other designs as well, and also the creation of the chaos star that is behind the crucifix inverted crucifix women's symbol on the back of some of the designs. So getting back to the two young women who sat in front of me, directly in front of me, and one with that cap. And I was so intrigued by just this drawing of two women's breasts, and that's it. It was just like a basic illustration. Wasn't photorealistic or anything like that, but it was resonated so strongly with what I was thinking that at the end of the talk we were listening to. I had to ask her what the design, what the brand was, and she didn't say anything. She immediately, just with a smile, showed me the inside of the cap, and it said Rachel Antonoff. And I was stunned by that because I knew of Rachel Antonoff because she is the sister of Jack Antonoff, who is a long time and intensive collaborator with Taylor Swift. And I've spoken of Taylor Swift in past chapters and the significance of her, but we'll also mention it. We'll also devote an entire episode to it. But also, I'd read an article upon first discovering Taylor Swift after she released 1989, wherein both Jack Antonoff and Rachel Antonoff are interviewed, and they speak about their relationship as siblings. And I learned a lot through that interview, and I do need to revisit some of this stuff because the memory is quite hazy, and I'm sure that I read another article just about Jack Antonoff. Anyway, around that time. And so it really stunned me because of the synchronicities and the intensity of what I was experiencing constantly at that time and still do. And I said, "Oh, where did you buy the cap?" She said, "Oh, I just found it in like a opportunity shop or something like that." So it felt just the way that it occurred, and this was a continual kind of thing that happened post-September. I was like, this feels like coordinated, but obviously it wasn't. And she didn't know who I was, and but just her sitting directly in front of me and then revealing that label on the inside of the cap. And so yeah, I was stunned, and then left the auditorium, the makeshift auditorium at that point. And as soon as I walked out, kind of in that direction toward the stairs, a large feather appeared directly in my path, and I think there was even a second one as well. But see, the helicopter flies directly overhead, like planes, helicopters. It's always like either directly overhead or directly in my sight line with perfect timing. Anyway, I hope you heard what I just said through the helicopter noise. And seeing that large feather immediately after I left the auditorium, and immediately after seeing the label on that cap, it gave me reassurance in terms of what I was doing with my designs. But I also followed Rachel Antonoff on Twitter and just did a little quick preview of kind of articles that have been written about her recently. Later that day or the next day. So that's one example of the significance of feathers, and that the feathers always appear directly in my path, in resonance with either my thinking or my experience of that time, and yeah, the timing is also crucial. Okay, so the universe has brought me here, so I will cover those two kind of t-shirt synchronicities that I mentioned in the clip down by the arrow, but there were more, but these two will be the ones that I'll mention, because if I film all of them, I'm never going to get to the end of this vlog, or this kind of foundation of the vlog. There may be more, who knows. But I had devised the design for the inverted crucifix women's symbol, and with the concept of weaponizing the vagina. Typically the fist is placed in the middle of that symbol, but based on my experience with Dr. Naomi Wolf's book, etc., and everything that was kind of coming into play at that time, I decided, well, why not have the vagina in there, and why not present the vagina as an image of power and beauty and elegance and grace, especially given the plethora of phallic imagery that is already out there, but also, personally does nothing for me. But after my initial sketch, I wasn't satisfied with it. There was something else that needed to be part of that design, especially because it was so prominent. It was kind of like a motif, if you like, of the brand. And as with other things that occurred during that time, I walked through these gardens here and intersected with a guy right there, like literally with perfect timing, who had a tattoo on his upper arm. And I was just so intrigued by it. I was struck by it immediately. And I asked him what it was, and he said, "Oh, this is a chaos star." And he explained a bit of the background to it, which I can't quite recall now, but I then did research on it after speaking with him. And it not only was ideal for the background of that image, and also made it look more like a weapon, in line with weaponization. But the number of points on the star as well also resonated with what I intended for the brand, and I can't recall it exactly now, but anyone who wants to find out more about that can either look up the number of points on that star and the significance in terms of femininity and ancient culture, or email me, inwardmarkings@gmail.com. So there's that. Okay, so this is a little bit further down from where I was at the park just before, and one of the t-shirt, or two of the t-shirt designs are based on a famous Timothy Leary quote, turn on, tune in, drop out. Timothy Leary was a famous person of the counterculture of the 60s in the United States, and experimented intensively with psychedelic drugs. For me, in terms of the brand, part of the basis was that I think we are at a point in time where we have learned from the mistakes of significant movements such as the 60s counterculture, like punk, the rave scene, the Reclaim the Streets movement. But the sense that I felt after returning to Melbourne was that millennial culture in the area of the inner north reminded me strongly of important aspects of all those kind of cultural movements, if you like. But even though I'm not a millennial, I feel like my mindset is more strongly resonant with that, and so that's why I came up with the phrase millennials of any age, because I don't think, like, I wanted to kind of reframe it as a state of mind rather than a number or a year of birth. And I feel like the salient spirit of all those movements is more vital now in 2019 than possibly ever. Certainly in terms of the 20th and 21st centuries. And so part of that download in that trance-like state with Deep Rock was an adaptation, a reframing of that quote that would be updated, but also because it fit in nicely. It's not something that I thought out. It just came to me like the Go Forth and Seven Ply reframing. And the initial slogans that I had were, and also because I still feel strongly about sort of this fixation or addiction to the online realm and how I think that can be damaging. And certainly my time in Bangkok and my time without a smartphone had reaffirmed kind of my sense of that, and even kind of generated it in the first place, because the internet obviously, and especially smartphone technology has been nascent over the last kind of decade, if you like. If you know what I mean, you'll know what I mean. And so the initial slogans were log off, tune in, log off, tune out, drop in for the skate side, and then for the graffiti it was log off, tune in, paint walls. But then it kind of occurred and then there was a reframing, there was a tweaking, because I realized this synchronicity happened before actually the tweaking, but I was just going with those and it was all good. And then in this park here, that is an extension of that other park, I was walking down that path right there in the middle of the day, similar to today, but there was literally nobody in the park. I don't know why. It was completely empty in this section anyway. Maybe there were people over there like there are today. But I walked down this path and then this guy appeared at that entrance right there at the exact moment that I'm walking down. And he had an interesting graphic on the front of his t-shirt. It was surfing related, and I was really paying attention to t-shirt designs, etc., that I'd see on the street, obviously, because I was looking at launching a streetwear brand. And I'd always check both sides of people's t-shirts. So as we crossed paths about there, and then he walked up the way I came, I looked at the back of his t-shirt, and it said, turn on. No. Tune in. No. Sorry. Turn on, tune out, drop in. So I hope I got that right. So in terms of the skate slogan that I had, it was log off, tune out, drop in. And then this shirt said turn on, tune out, drop in. So upon seeing that, I realized, holy shit, that's way too close to what I've come up with. And because of the timing, and also it was just completely empty, and the vibe that I was feeling when that happened, because this is around the time, like with the Chaos Star, I said it was a different day to the Chaos Star, but this was around the time when my experiences in the real world were influencing my creative stuff. And it felt like the universe was showing me, and this was near to when I was paying for the graphic designer to do the mock-ups. So it was perfect timing. Like, it was like a kind of late 11th hour kind of salvaging. I'm so glad that I had that interaction, because upon seeing that version from the surf brand, I was like, oh fuck, I need to adapt. And with that, during that tweaking process, I changed it to log out, because I realized that was more resonant, like in terms of the computer lexicon, I guess. And instead of drop in, ride walls, because it fits so nicely in terms of ride walls and paint walls, having that common theme of walls, and also in terms of street culture walls, public walls being significant. It fit really well. So it was then log out, tune in, paint walls. And this idea of being able to tune in because of the logging out. So log out, tune in, paint walls, log out, tune in, ride walls. And I was so, if not for that synchronicity, I wouldn't have done that tweaking. And it's funny the way the universe works. Like, you'll feel like settled in something, or you'll feel, things will transpire over time unexpectedly. It's amazing. And yeah, because of that synchronicity, I was so happy with the final slogans that I came up with. So yeah, in the months between September and the launch in June of 2019, I would sit on this front curb, like, because it was totally dead. It'd be like 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and the curb is just a nice size to sit on. I sit in another spot now, but it's just cheap coffee here, and 24 hours. And I would experience synchronicities with the license plates that would come past, the signage on the trucks and cars, etc., that would come past. Animals. This is where I first encountered a half fox breed dog that I've never encountered in my life previously. And I would think about the project, I would think about the brand, ruminate on stuff. This would be the place where I'd stop before and after. I would just do like street art stuff. And during a moment of uncertainty about what the hell I was doing with this brand and the process and my life in general, I looked up for some reason, and a feather came floating down from that that awning up there, and it just slowly drifted down with the perfect timing that I needed to feel reassured. So yeah. Okay, so another occasion, it was really early morning, the sun had just come up. I crossed the park over that way after having a run in, because I would do stickering as part of like the street art that I was doing, and had a run in with like one of the local workers who just happened to drive up at the exact time I was putting a sticker up, and we had a slight, it was kind of an altercation, but it was just exchange of words, and I just wished him a great day and walked on, and he didn't have any kind of opportunity to like take a photo of me or anything like that, but I still felt anxious. Like, it was the first encounter that I had with any kind of authority figure, I guess, while doing street art, and so I was, and this was pre the launch, so I was also, it combined with my anxiety around what had happened in September, you know, the signs the universe was giving me, and whether it was the right thing to be proceeding with the project. And so I walked across the park and had anxiety for the time subsequent to that encounter. And feathers were on my mind because they'd appeared previously. But I wasn't like asking for a feather, I wasn't asking for reassurance. I actually was more along the lines of, okay, that was the sign from the universe that it really was a trance-like state, doing the street art like every morning prior to the launch. But it was something that I was compelled to do, and that altercation made me think, okay, the universe now needs me to stop, and you know, it may be significant in a bigger way as well. But then I reached, after crossing the park, I reached this corner right here and stopped at this, that verge, that corner there, and for some reason was compelled to like, so standing here, and then was compelled to look behind me that way, and literally a white feather came floating from above there, from the, like with the awning at the fuel stop where I get coffee. It just appeared from that overhang. It was probably, I don't think it came over, but that's when I first spotted it, and it just slowly drifted down toward the ground there. And the timing was perfect, and there were no other feathers around. I could see no birds anywhere in the vicinity either. And so I proceeded with the street art that I was doing as part of that trance-like state, if you like, and yeah, perfect timing. And this particular feather synchronicity occurred after the launch, actually. And again, coming back from a morning walk and doing street art stuff, I just felt compelled for some reason just to stand here and just look up at the sky and the trees, which I typically do anyway, but on this particular morning, I was just feeling so good about life and having done the launch and everything else that was going on in my life, in my world, that I just was kind of, with headphones on, just looking around in kind of wonder, similar to when I first came back from Asia in Feb 2018, and I spoke of like the sunrise through the trees and so forth. But at the exact time that, this is Taylor Swift related again, at the exact time that I Don't Want to Live Forever started, I saw the finest feather just literally just fall down from this part of the sky and land on the ground, and it just drifted down, but it was an unusual looking feather. I've got a photo of it. It's on my Twitter feed if you can find it. I don't think I'll be able to. And so it wasn't a typical looking feather. It had like, it was like variegated, that might not be a word, but there were like gradations of colour, and it was so fine and really thin. I'm not sure, maybe it was an American minor bird. But the synchronicities that would involve what's playing through my headphones would continually occur, and could only occur after the the universe brought me the smartphone that I'm filming this on. But it was, again, I was transfixed, and it was the strangest thing. I should have gotten video of it as it was floating down, but I was so transfixed by it, and the timing was so perfect in regards to that song. And it was also because other synchronicities that occurred with that exact timing with other Taylor Swift songs before that occurred. So that added to my just transfixed state. Yeah. Okay, so this feather arrived actually after the launch of the brand, and I was on one of my morning walks and had walked from that direction along that path, and it was I'd just seen an Instagram post from Taylor Swift regarding a gift that she received from Lily Aldridge, I think. Lily someone, while she was in Paris for the Lover concert that I think it was in September. And so it was around, I don't know if she was playing at the time I was walking or something, but it was definitely the same day, evening. And so I was walking along that path and had my headphones on, and at the exact time that If This Was a Movie by Taylor Swift came on shuffle, and I was listening to just a library of so many songs, and I wasn't listening to a Taylor Swift album or anything like that. It's just, she was part of the library obviously, and that song just suddenly came on, and two birds suddenly appeared like in the sky, literally directly above me as I reached this intersection. And they were kind of playing around up in the sky about there, and then one of them literally dropped a feather like on the ground there, or potentially, God, my memory, I've got photos of it, but maybe, actually, I think it was on the ground here. And then as I walked up the path, the birds were like over there, above me, over there, directly above me, and dropped the feather, like a single feather, like literally right there next to me. And but it occurred at the exact time the Taylor Swift song If This Was a Movie started. The timing was literally perfect when the feather dropped. And the thing about that song is that it's not often talked about, and I don't think I've ever seen Taylor Swift play it live, but I distinctly recall of the many thousands of tweets that I've sent. I did send one regarding, and I think, yeah, I would have tagged Taylor Swift in it, regarding how much I love that song, and especially like the opening guitar notes. They're just like, yeah, I feel it through my whole body. It's just such a amazing, like, and the melody, that opening melody. I mean, the whole song, but especially that opening part. It's one of my favorites of hers, and it just makes me feel like my body feels something that I don't recall ever feeling before or anywhere else in that way. There's just something about that particular opening of that song. So yeah. Okay, so I did this small business program like for 12 weeks at the start of 2019, and it was timed so perfectly. So just the process post-September, everything just lined up like perfectly. It's like divine timing. So I was able to secure the funds for the brand, and they came through in February. And then I inquired into this small business program, which is a government program that's been run for like a couple of decades. And it, oh look, there's the 2022 tram that arrives exactly then, with the words Amplify written across the tram, and like Amplify has appeared, the word Amplify has appeared synchronously repeatedly post September 2018. Anyway, and so it provides support to people launching a small business for like the first 9 to 12 months. And the next one that was available and that I successfully got into, and part of that, a big part of that I think was because I secured the funds with perfect timing. It started in March, and then it ended like a few weeks, or not a few, around the time, I can't remember the exact dates, but the timing was so that the launch date was pretty much at the end of the program, the training part of it, and then post-launch the support part of it with the launching of the business started. Like if I drew a timeline, everything just lined up so perfectly. So yeah, I was sitting here at the State Library of Victoria, having lunch during a training day for that program, and I was feeling incredibly I felt electrified. I mean, that's been the case post-September, but on this particular day I was feeling everything was really intense in a good way. And I was just sitting here having lunch. I just decided to have lunch here, even though I hadn't done that before during the course, or I don't think I did afterwards either. Just on the corner here, and suddenly I see a feather floating like in a kind of zigzag pattern just here. And again, like with my other experiences, I was transfixed by it. No one else seemed to notice it, but time just seemed to stop or slow down, like as I'm looking at this feather, and I'm wondering, is something else going to happen? And literally at the exact moment the feather landed on the ground, I had my first post-September synchronicity with a guy who I'd had a conversation with, who used to own a local skate shop in my area, and is friends with people that I not only had synchronicities with, but a couple of people who I have known via social media for a really long time, including my time in Bangkok. And he appeared just at those stairs right there at the exact time that feather landed. And feathers have appeared synchronously with human synchronicities on a number of occasions post-September. And on one of those Fridays before going to the restaurant, I just had those periods of anxiety just before returning there. I just found myself just hanging out in these back streets near the restaurant. Interestingly, the building number is 29, but the next one is 33. So numerically it was powerful. But, oh look, and there's a tiger directly across. I've never seen that before. Anyway, and I was walking just down there, and literally from above there, now you can see there are birds there today, but there were no birds on that particular Friday. But a white feather, as I was just walking down there, a white feather came falling out of the sky and landed exactly directly in my path. And no, yes, I'm sure you're thinking, there were probably just birds everywhere. No, when I looked up, there were no birds, and I could not see where the feather originated from. And then at the exact moment the feather fell down the ground, a guy turned the corner right at the end there to walk down into the street. So we crossed paths, and my deep feeling was that I needed to pass that feather on to him rather than hanging on to it. And I did that kind of midway about there, and he smiled at me, and he looked a bit run down and looked like he wasn't having the best day. As soon as I gave him the feather, he smiled at me and he said something very similar to this: "I know what this means, and this has made my day, thank you." And then we just kept walking our separate ways. It was cool. So on another morning, after doing street art, walking, etc., I just arrived on this fairly major street, same street that the restaurant is on actually, and I was standing just under this awning for some reason. I can't recall if it was maybe slightly spitting or something, and I was just standing here looking at the sky and resting and wondering about my life, and again during a moment of uncertainty and wondering what the fuck am I doing, a bird literally landed directly on the power line, directly across from me, and dropped the feather, so it fell down on the ground. And yeah, at that point actually, because I just realised that the word ice is across the road. At that point, ice hadn't been a significant synchronicity, not from memory, but yeah, it was perfect timing and positioning again. I don't know exactly what's happened, but it was definitely on this street again, a morning after I had a walk. And there's like a post box jutting out, and like you could rest something on top of it on one of these shops, and for some reason it's not in this section, even though I'm adamant this is where I was. And I remember just standing by it, and I think maybe it was raining or something. For some reason I was stopped, and I saw a heap of birds across like one of those top of those buildings over there, like the rows of buildings. And as I was standing there next to the letterbox thingy, one of the birds literally flew across the street and landed directly on the letterbox thingy that was adjacent, right next to me, and dropped like a series of feathers. It was like, not a series, just like a bundle of feathers. It was like 3 or 4, like right at that exact moment, right next to me. And it was kind of like it was communicating with me the way it looked at me, etc. But yeah, flew across from one of those top of those buildings and then landed right next to me. Okay, so I was at the library doing finance and budgeting stuff regarding the brand. So this is pre-launch. I can't remember if I'd sent out the invite or not, but I was feeling anxious about monetary stuff. I can't remember what the exact matter was, but I was on the second floor of the library, which is just there, and I walked down the stairs and was mulling over that stuff as I was walking down, and then I exited at that entrance, exit there, and just where that brick section of the wall is, a feather started swirling around in the air, a white one, and there were 2 women standing at the curb there. But upon seeing that feather, like at a time when I needed some reassurance, like time just stopped again, and I was just standing there staring at it, and I was looking at the 2 women on the curb talking, and they didn't see it at all. And that's the thing with all of these feather synchronicities, it's no one else seems to notice, but because of my experience with them, yeah, I can't not notice them. So yeah, and then that was just further support for me to continue with the launching of the brand. Okay, so I would invite people for brunch based on Universal Signs in the period between September 2018 and the launch of the brand, and I would take them to that restaurant where that experience happened in September. And on one Saturday, excuse me, I had an in-depth conversation with the couple that I'd invited for brunch, and revealed to them more than I had with other people that I'd had brunch or a meeting with. One of the people is an artist, so that was part of the reason why I wanted to do it. You know, with a view that there might be a potential collaboration in the future. And upon exiting the restaurant, the woman who I was friends with, the female member of the couple, of the heterosexual couple that I was friends with, she exited first, and she, where that stop sign is, she immediately came across a a large feather. I had not found a feather that big in all of the synchronicities post September, and it was like nearly half a meter long. It was so big. I don't even know what bird it would have come from, and she didn't either, but it was literally on that corner outside the restaurant as soon as she walked out, and she picked it up and showed it to me, and I was stunned. Especially given the conversation that we just had over brunch, and for her to find that immediately, yeah, it was extraordinary. Okay, so I had feather synchronicities prior to what was the most significant feather synchronicity post September, and probably still is. I had decided on the date of the launch and hadn't released the flyer yet, but asked one of the staff members at the restaurant where I had that experience if she would help out on the night of the launch. And I sat here on the balcony, I think, yeah, the morning after, because it would have been a Friday night, just wondering what the fuck had I done, like completely like questioning, because I didn't know her at the time, but it was just this strong sense that that it was the right thing to ask her to help out. She's a bar manager. I needed someone to help with drinks, etc. And just the vibe that I got from her from the times that I'd been going there, it seemed like a good idea, and I was paying her for helping out. But even so, the following day, I just got this, overwhelming anxiety about having asked her, given that I didn't know her, and that was it was connected to my, like, the kind of overall uncertainty I had about what I was doing. But literally, and this sounds like unbelievable, but I'm not here to convince you, but literally at that exact moment as I was thinking that, now as you can see, like, that is like what do you call that, like the handrail type thing of the balcony just at the bottom there. But as you can see, there are no birds flying about. It's not, birds obviously fly around this area, but they're not constantly in the sky and in this view from the balcony. But literally at that exact moment, a bird, and I have no idea where it came from, flew across the face of the balcony, I guess, lookout area. So emerged from where that hand railing thing is. I don't know where it came from. Like, as you can see, there's kind of roofing there. So I don't know. Yeah, I did not see it. The first point I saw it was when it emerged up from there, right? And it flew across the face, up that way towards the sky. And as it flew, it literally dropped a feather so that it landed, like, literally there. It was the strangest thing. I know that sounds like unbelievable, but it wasn't just the timing, it was the positioning of the feather. It was perfectly dropped onto my left toes, and like in between my, oh my god, as I'm filming this, that feather has just blown in from somewhere. It wasn't there before. Anyway, so that provided reassurance about and there's blown away. Anyway, that provided reassurance about asking that person to help out, and so yeah, I continued with what I was doing. And just another example of a feather synchronicity in line with a person synchronicity. I was sitting on this curb here as I used to do for a bit, drinking coffee. This is in the afternoon, funnily enough, and I saw a white feather like blow right next to me. I didn't see it beforehand. It just came from somewhere and then blew right next to my feet. And like with the other occasions, time kind of stopped and I was transfixed by it. And at the exact moment that I became aware of the feather, I heard the sound of a skateboard drop onto the road. The sound of skateboard wheels drop onto the road, very distinct sound. And looked up and saw a skateboarder immediately at that moment, who I'd had one previous synchronicity with post-September last year, 2018, and I would then have one further one. And yeah, there's been none since that third one. The other interesting thing about this spot is that I have no idea how it happened, but I pulled out my purse thingy and just left it next to me, and then walked away without grabbing it. But I only realised a fair bit later that I'd lost it, and just resigned myself to having lost it, and thought that's just something universal that will possibly make sense a bit later. And I can't remember, was it the next day or the day after, I was once again sitting on this curb, I think around a similar time as when I saw the feather, and I heard a call from to my right, and a guy approached who's actually a bouncer at a venue on the corner just over there. And I can't remember why, but we'd had a conversation quite a while before that, maybe, I don't know, mid 2018. But when around the time I lost my wallet was around it was after September, of course, but I think it was early 2019. And he approached with my purse thingy, and it was perfect timing because I'd rang to cancel my driver's license, but they said to me, "Oh, just give it a little bit because a lot of people misplace it and then regret cancelling it so soon." Great advice. And so it didn't cost me, because it costs to replace your license, and so it didn't cost me that brief moment of losing the purse. But when he walked over, he had this huge tattoo of an angel on his left calf, and it was just, for me, it was just another sign from the universe of protection. And the timing was wonderful, and yeah, I haven't lost my purse since then. Okay, and so shortly after that green material that looked like a feather appeared on my pillow, this feather, if you can just make it out, it's very old now, but it landed and just stuck to the, I think it was 1 or 2 days after, just stuck to the fly screen in my room. And given my experience with feathers, it gave me reassurance. And as you can see, there's no other feathers in the entire screen. It was, and the timing of it as well, immediately after that green material. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Made it especially resonant, and it's stayed there ever since, and has provided, and I've taken it as reassurance that I'm continuing to do what I need to do. And if it ever disappears, I'll know what that means too. Okay.